Hey guys, I know this sounds like another internet myth, but wait until you trace it back 1,000 years. There's a frequency, a single, specific pitch, that people today call the miracle tone. You've probably seen it floating around the internet. 528 hertz. It's said to repair DNA, calm the nervous system, even open a channel between the human soul and the divine. Most people assume the story begins on social media. Well, it doesn't. While the claim about 528 hertz is modern, the ideas that inspired it reach back to a medieval monk, a hymn sung in monasteries 1,000 years ago, and a belief that certain sounds weren't just pleasant. They were a doorway to something beyond ordinary reality. So, did medieval scholars actually believe a specific frequency could open a channel to the heavens? In their own way, yes. Not with a dial or a tuning fork, but through a belief system where sound itself was treated as sacred technology. A key that could, in theory, unlock the structure of creation. To understand that belief, we have to go back further than the monastery, to the idea that the universe wasn't silent at all, that underneath the stars, the rhythm of nature and life itself, there was a deeper order, a perfect harmony, put there by something greater than us. And if that harmony was really out there, maybe it could be found, maybe it could even be heard. The medieval thinkers didn't have microphones or frequency analyzers, but they'd noticed something humans have always known instinctively. Sound changes us. A melody can pull up a memory from 20 years ago. A chant can settle a room. A strong rhythm can make thousands of strangers move like they share one heartbeat. So, were medieval scholars just imagining a link between sound and the universe? Or had they stumbled onto something about vibration and consciousness that we're only now starting to study? To find where this belief came from, we have to go back more than 2,000 years, to ancient Greece, and a philosopher convinced that numbers were the secret language of the universe. That man was Pythagoras. Most people know him from the Pythagorean theorem they learned in school, but his worldview was much bigger than geometry. He believed the entire universe ran on mathematical principles, and one of the clearest hints of that hidden order was music. According to the accounts that survive, Pythagoras found that dividing a string into certain ratios produced notes that felt naturally right together. If music followed invisible mathematical laws, he reasoned, maybe the whole universe did too. The stars, the planets, the seasons, all part of one larger pattern. Out of that idea came one of the strangest concepts in ancient philosophy, the music of the spheres. The belief that the movement of the heavens created a kind of cosmic harmony, not necessarily audible, but running through everything, like the universe itself was one enormous instrument. That idea outlived the Greeks. It survived for centuries and eventually fused with Christian ideas about creation inside medieval scholarship. Monasteries were where a lot of that scholarship happened, and monks weren't just praying quietly in the corner. Many were serious mathematicians, astronomers, and philosophers studying how the physical world connected to the divine. One of the biggest influences here was a 6th century philosopher named Boethius, whose work became required reading across medieval Europe. His idea was that music existed on more than one level: the harmony of the universe, the harmony within the human body and soul, and the actual music people played and sang. For scholars shaped by his work, music wasn't entertainment. It was a reflection, proof that the same pattern ran through everything, from the orbit of a planet to the vibration of a single string. And if sound reflected the order of creation, maybe certain sounds could bring a person closer to the divine. Which brings us to the place this idea took its most extraordinary physical form, the cathedrals. To medieval builders, a cathedral was heaven rendered in stone. The soaring ceiling stood in for the heavens above. Light through stained glass stood in for divine presence. Even the proportions were tied to ideas of cosmic balance. But there was one more piece most people never think about: sound. Medieval builders understood something architects still study today: A space can transform how sound behaves inside it. The scale of the stone and the shape of the vaults meant a single voice could travel, swell, and echo for several seconds. One note sung by one monk wouldn't just vanish. It would hang in the air, bounce back off the stone, blend into the next note before it even faded, until it felt like the sound existed on its own. Picture walking into one of these cathedrals with no electric light, no recordings, nothing amplified, just candlelight against ancient stone. Then, out of the dark, a group of monks begins to sing. Their voices lift toward that impossibly high ceiling, and the sound wraps around you like the building itself is answering back. That wasn't just music to the people living then. That was an encounter with something bigger than themselves. This was the whole purpose of Gregorian chant. It was sung for hours a day inside monasteries, not as performance, but as connection. Slow melodies, repeated patterns, no instruments competing for attention, all built to turn a person's focus inward. The human voice was the instrument. Because unlike a flute or an organ, the voice came straight from the human body, God's own creation, in their eyes. So a person singing wasn't just making noise. They were offering up a piece of themselves. And this is where that miracle tone from the start of the video enters the story. In the 11th century, an Italian monk named Guido of Arezzo was trying to help other monks memorize melodies faster. He turned to a hymn called Ut Queant Laxus and noticed each line started on a note one step higher than the last. He took the first syllable of each line, Ut, Re, Mi, Fa, Sol, La, and used them to name the notes. That system evolved into solfeggio. The same Do, Re, Mi you learned as a kid. Centuries later, someone worked out the frequency tied to one of those syllables in a particular tuning system and landed on a number close to 528 hertz. By the 20th century, that number had been rebranded as the miracle tone, said to repair DNA and unlock higher consciousness. A real medieval monk, working from a real hymn, trying to make sacred music easier to pass down. And centuries later, people are still convinced his notes hold the key to something cosmic. Because even though medieval scholars had no concept of modern physics, they were circling something science takes very seriously today: vibration. Every sound starts with movement. A guitar string, a speaker cone, your own vocal cords oscillating hundreds of times a second. Those vibrations travel outward until they hit your ears, and once they reach your body, they interact directly with your nervous system and brain. Modern neuroscience backs this up. Music is one of the most powerful sensory experiences we have. A song can light up parts of the brain tied to memory, emotion, and reward. Sound genuinely has the power to shape how we experience reality. Not metaphorically, measurably. And maybe that's the part where medieval scholars were closer to something than we give them credit for. They couldn't measure brain activity or study a neural response, but they'd watched, over centuries, that sound could shift emotion, that chanting could pull someone into deep focus, that music could make a room feel connected to something beyond ordinary life. They just described what they were seeing with the only language they had: heaven, creation, the divine. 528 hertz isn't a secret key that swings open a door to the heavens. But the belief that it might be didn't come from nowhere. It came from a real monk, a real hymn, and 1,000 years of humans noticing that sound does something to us we still don't fully have words for. The medieval world believed heaven had a sound. They went looking for it in music, in mathematics, and in the stars. Even though modern science hasn't found a literal doorway to heaven, it has uncovered something that would have fascinated those medieval scholars. The universe really is full of vibration, and it really does shape the way we experience and feel the world. Maybe the mystery was never about finding one perfect frequency. Maybe it was about asking a question humanity has never stopped asking. Why does something as invisible as sound have such a profound effect on the human mind? Medieval scholars believed the answer pointed toward heaven. Modern science points toward the brain, the nervous system, and the remarkable power of vibration. But perhaps those are not competing ideas, just different ways of describing the same experience. And perhaps that's why, after more than 1,000 years, we're still listening for a harmony that so many before us believed connected the human soul to something beyond this world. So guys, that's it for today's video. This was honestly one of the most fascinating topics I've researched. The power of vibration is incredible. So keep those good vibrations going. And I'll see you again in the next one.